Life is both simple and complex. Our past links us to our present and future. Some of us know our role and purpose. Most of us are trying to figure it out. Join me. Let's figure it out together.
Welcome back, welcome back. My name is Dr. Fritz. I am a New York State licensed psychologist, and this is the Ask Dr. Fritz show. In each episode here, we talk about issues that impact the community. We like to bring you information, people, and practices to live your life to the fullest. Each time we do this episode, we like to bring in guests that have information that can help enrich your lives. And no different today, we have a guest on the line. His name is John McEwen. He's a good friend of mine. He's a veteran who served, I'll let him tell you that when he jumps on. Is John McEwen, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello, hello.
Welcome. I wanted to get you right from the beginning because you and I have been talking a bit about various different issues, but I wanted to talk particularly with you about something called veteran reintegration.
Yep. That's a good topic.
That's a good topic. So I want you're the veteran. I want you to jump in and actually talk about veteran reintegration from the standpoint of being a veteran.
Sure. I can tell you about my own testimony. I've been out of ETS, which means I separated from military service in 2012 and headed headlong into civilian society and started my interactions, which I've talked to you about before, which was a cultural experience for me, where I had to relearn about what it is to be a civilian. Even though I was a civilian for a long time before I went in the military, I had a new role, and I had different experiences that I was bringing into the environment. So,
all right, so let's walk through it. I remember, I think it was back in 2000, you entered the military. Is that correct, or was it 2001?
I went in January of 2001, prior to 9/11.
Okay, and I remember the process for you involved obviously enlisting and going into basic training. But before we even get to that, what prompted you to enter the military at the time that you did?
Well, yeah, it's something like going into the military is a big decision. And at that time, I was very successful in what I was doing. I was working as a New York State teacher, and I was working for the CUNY University. I was working for York College. And I had a good job. But at that time, I really was looking for some more meaning and purpose in my life. And I always had a strong desire to serve in the military ever since I was a boy. So I did a lot of research on what I was going to do, and I found the job that I wanted to do. And then I went and enlisted. I had a full decision. I had a plan. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I wanted to serve my country.
Okay, and so you enlisted, and then you took the oath, and then you went into basic training. What was the transition like for you to get into the military?
It was pretty dramatic. At 31 years old, I went from being a civilian where I was a teacher, and I had that role of a teacher, as someone people would come to as and it's sort of a level of rank and structure in terms of I was the go-to person for ideas and was expected to perform in terms of creating structure in the learning environment. And then I went into being just a specialist where I had no rank, I had none of my civilian accolades applied to this new environment. And here I was learning something brand new. So the first 6 months was a bit disconcerting. However, they do a very, very good job of training you.
And that's what
they take very, very good care of you.
And that's what I wanted to get into with you, because there was quite a bit of a process to go from being a regular citizen, born and raised in the United States, to transitioning into the military. There's a lot of steps that were taken and a lot of training that you underwent to go not only into the military, but go into a really new world, a different code of conduct, a different code of life. Is that correct?
That's right, and you're also subject to different laws. You're under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Mm-hmm. So not only do you have American laws you have to follow as being part of the citizenry, you have to also follow what the military says you have to do, and that's supported by the criminal justice system. So Now, no, you always have like a double threat, I'd say. So you really, really can't get in trouble because if you do, there's consequences for everything you do.
And so walk us through, though, your first few years. I know that a lot of things that you did were top secret, so to speak, and there's some things you probably can't talk about, but walk us through some of the experiences that you had and the trainings that you had to help you transition to the work that you did.
Well, I went through a lot of training, but I also went through a lot of selection, where I was trying to get a very special kind of job, and I really, really wanted to be a Special Forces medic, which is an 18 Delta, which I achieved. But it's very, very difficult. The learning curve is high. You have to be able to physically and mentally perform. You have to have impeccable integrity, and the test is very difficult. So the process took about six years or so. I started off in the Ranger Unit, which was a great preparation for me. I was with the 275 Ranger Regiment up in Fort Lewis, and I was a specialist there. And when people would ask me, "Hey, how did you become so successful in your career?" I said, "Well, I grew up right," meaning I grew up in a good unit, and I grew up with great leadership. And that unit in particular has a great reputation for it. But there are other units in the military, and I know from my peers that they also grew up in great leadership environments as well.
So some of what I'm hearing you say is that your prior experiences before entering the military definitely prepared you for what you were going to experience. And you did enter the military, I think, older than a lot of other people do. You entered at the age of 31, you were saying.
Which means I was about 10 years older than everyone else when I first started.
And you told me a story about that.
Except for the senior enlisted.
Yeah, so your first person that was in charge of you was how many years younger than you?
He was 21 years old, so he was 10 years younger than me. And he was a great leader. And unfortunately, he was killed in Iraq in 2005, so God rest his soul. Mm-hmm. And that was Ricardo Barraza. He was just a very, very good young leader, and inspired me in success in a lot of things I've done in continuance after being under his tutelage. So.
Okay. So it's fair to say, as you transitioned into the military, there's a lot of training, a lot of contingencies that they prepare you for. You get into the military, you specialize, and there's additional trainings and specializations that you get into as you move along. And then you're exposed to frontline combat, which, as civilians we know is quite traumatic. We'll can never understand what you went through. But we do know that when people come back from the Army, they come with a whole host of things that they've experienced in civilian life. Coming back to it is quite traumatic. Can you talk about some of those experiences for you?
It's interesting how the word traumatic is, what I would use is the word extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
The traumatic still says that something happened to me that was bad, I got injured or wounded, and I have an issue. Whereas the issue I have is the experiences I had were extraordinary. They're beyond the normative. And I come back and I really don't know how to articulate those experiences to what's normal. And that's sort of a philosophical battle that each veteran has to kind of struggle with, which I did. And I had to go on a journey, mm-hmm. my own little mini expedition to try to figure all that out and find meaning in it.
So John, you were in the military how long? How many years was that?
About 12 years.
About 12 years. And when did you leave? What was the date that you left?
I got out in 2012.
In 2012. So from 2001 to 2012. That's quite a bit of time. What was the process of transitioning out? Did the military adequately prepare you to leave the military? Was there as much fanfare and training and planning before you left the military on the part of what the military overtly provided to you? Was that there?
No. Basically, within 2 weeks of me returning home from, I was actually coming home from a deployment in Afghanistan. I came back home in January of 2012. Around the end of the month, maybe the beginning of February, and within 2 weeks, I was separated from the military. What they call out processing. So I had a couple of meetings where they talked about, you have to go and sign a sheet and attend like a little bit of a seminar, mm-hmm. but nothing in comparison to the preparation I had to go through to go to combat. To come out of combat, I didn't need anything at all. At least that was. How in terms of my perception at that time, no one was really offering me any type of transition outlet. I just would sign paperwork and go home.
And so while it took quite a bit of effort to get into the military in terms of training and preparation and integration into the military. Getting out of the military was fairly easy. Would you say that?
Yeah, compared to everything else I've done in the military, it was probably one of the simplest processes. Besides all the administration and bureaucracy you have to kind of deal with for about 2 weeks, you're pretty much left alone. And left to we say square away your personal goods and square away your family, and then go on your next mission, which is to enter civilian life.
Right. So, so along those lines, let's get into the meat of the topic here: veteran reintegration. And I wanted to have you talk a little bit about getting into it. So I'd make the point that there was a lot of effort and energy on the part of even the military in terms of its structure into getting you into the military, preparing you for being in the military, which that makes sense. But then getting you out of the military, there's very little preparation, very little in the way of the planning. And then what happens is we have veterans returning from the war, and they've been in extraordinary situations, as you've called it, and probably that's a much better way to talk about it, but extraordinary circumstances back into civilian life, which one would think you were trained for, obviously because you grew up, but the experience of being in the military, being away that long, seeing the extraordinary things that you've seen must have changed how you looked at, changed your maturity level, changed your attitudes on a number of different levels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I would say it's that's a similar experience to my peers who grew up in the military, where they entered the military at 18. So, and they never had, besides high school maybe, a kind of a full-blown career or what that meant.
Right.
So I did have some advantages when I did get out, because I did have my own personal plan of what I'd like to do. But I also talked to a few of my peers, and they said they have a plan, but it wasn't what they expected. And not at their own fault, just because they never had the experience of having to do that prior.
Right. Well, if they entered the military at the age of 18, it's like they pretty much were raised in that culture, and a transition back to civilian life would be much more of a change. And having entered so young, they had less years of experience in civilian life than even you did.
I would even more specifically say that most of their adult experience had been in the military.
All right.
Because you do get time to interact with civilian society, because when you're in garrison, you were at home. You're not constantly at war. You're at home. You're able to go out shopping. You're able to interact with the civilian population. But you do have a role, and you have a responsibility to the service because you're a uniformed person. So you do grow up as an adult with a lot of, you're under a different set of rules than everyone else. Mm-hmm. Right.
And so you came back from the military. Let's talk a little bit about also the kind of issues that, and what you can talk about, what you faced when you came back in terms of readjusting, what it felt like. We can also talk a bit about what veterans face, what's going on with them. You and I have talked before, and you were saying that people often don't know how to talk to a vet. They may say something like, thank you for your service, but generally the conversation is stilted thereafter. What was your experience?
Well, it was in the beginning, and it's not like that now, but in the beginning it was a little bit of a point of contention for me, because when people would ask me about my service, I would also think in my head, well, what have you done? And that's a tough place to be psychologically if you're kind of disgruntled like that. And it didn't surface me well, meaning that that kind of attitude really just led to, not really being able to socially interact. Mm-hmm. And just kind of, the person's genuinely coming with me with gratitude. Right. Although it was, there's some politics, and there's different arguments going on out in the, in the world about, displacement of veterans and how veterans are being treated. I didn't feel like a victim. I came out, I was honorably discharged. I felt that I had accomplished something. Mm-hmm. And I started to reframe that question when people ask me, thank you for your service. I would reframe it as, well, they're really interested in me, and they're trying to find meaning about who I am and what I did. So I need to ask myself, what does it mean for me? And I have to start instilling meaningfulness in my own environment. So I'd say thank you to all the people that asked me that question, because it got me thinking, and that was an important question to ask myself.
So if you're asked that question now, what do you say?
I said, I say thank you, of course.
Okay.
And And usually the conversation ends. But if they want to ask more, I said, I'm still searching for meaning. I'm trying to make it all happen. And I said, I really love what I do, and I want to continue helping people and helping the community.
Right.
And continue my mission. My next mission is selfless service. Try to find another way to invest in our community, where I don't have to be a military member. I'm not going to change anything about being in the military. But I think all the skills I've learned in the military, to include leadership, organization, human relations, all those really good things I learned, I can apply to new endeavors.
So I'm going to ask you again, so if I were to say to you right now, what's the quick answer to thank you for your service? You say thank you, and then what's an additional reframe? Or maybe what I'm looking for is, what question would you like me as a civilian, or what approach to you would you like me to have that goes deeper than just thank you for your service?
Well, just how you doing?
How's
everything going?
How are you feeling?
How's your journey? How do you feel? And even if the person says fine or yes or no, it gets veterans thinking about stuff. And if people actually actively listen, it's even better, because there's a civic discourse then. I'm talking to another American, and we're talking about the military, which affects all of us. Even though I was in the military, everyone in the United States is affected by its military members and are participating at some level.
Yeah.
Because the country is involved in this.
What conversation isn't happening between you and civilians, or between veterans and the rest of us, that should be happening in your estimation?
I think the civilians need to understand more about the vast amounts of experience that veterans have. And a lot of kind of older people who have been through Vietnam, been through Korea, they understand because they've seen the workforce re-enter. And they've talked to people back in the 70s, and they talked to people back in the 60s and the 50s. So they remember the conversations that they had. Mm-hmm. And they know that veterans are a great resource for experience. But the Army as a whole, and even the other military organizations, they teach people very well. So they come up with a huge level of skill sets and experience. The only problem is that they're starting at ground zero. And they're forced to kind of work themselves back up into whoever in the workforce structure.
Right. Can you talk more about that, about starting from ground zero?
Well, like if you can use my example, in the military, I was a senior NCO, I was an E7. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of duties and responsibilities. I had about 50 people that I was in charge of at any given time. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it would go up to about 200 when I was traveling. And I was responsible for each one of those people. It's hard to relate that experience to someone who's working in, say, corporate America. They understand being in charge is something different. Whereas you're in command, or if you're in charge of something in the military, you are ultimately responsible for everything that person does or fails to do.
And
so you are the person.
Viscerally, it's much more of a life and death situation in any given situation. So if you're a CEO of a company and in charge of lots of people, while that's a pretty high-stakes job, what you're saying is that it's almost not comparable in terms of what the stakes are.
Right, because we don't leave a man behind, or we don't leave a soldier behind, or a soldier member behind. That goes right into our training doctrine and our philosophy on life. If someone is struggling, we all move to help them succeed, and we'll do it as a group. And it's a pretty strong mentality, especially if you're in a high-stakes environment where there's lots and lots of uncertainty, and then everyone around you is there to provide that certainty you need to move forward.
How does that mentality contrast with the mentality you come back to as a veteran that has been working with 50, 100 or so people on any particular project or mission at one time, moving as a unit? What kind of culture shock are you hit with when you come back?
Well, I realize that I don't have the same accolades or like certifications or degrees that would be a typical acknowledgement for leadership. Although I have lots and lots of leadership training, it's hard to, when I'm talking to people, they're used to seeing people, well, you have a degree, you have this, you have that.
Yeah.
Well, I have military experience. I think people are starting to see that, wow, the military really produces a lot of great leaders, and they can be, tasked to put anything together, and they do a great job at it. It's not like the movies. You have really professional people who are looking to, make a change or influence an organization, or even, take the reins of a small company like I did, and lead it forward into success.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I would say right now in the community, and at least in the job force, it's about a lot of people are about a 50% on awareness of this trait that we all have, especially the people who have been in the military a long time, where they have made that breakthrough in leadership, and they understand how to take care of people and get things done.
And then what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that then you come back to a lot of what mattered in the military doesn't necessarily equate to what matters in civilian life.
That's a good philosophical question. We could talk for another hour on that one. But the
Yes,
quick answer would be, I think everything I learned in the military applies to everything that I do.
Currently.
In terms of, because it's important. It's because there's low stakes in the civilian environment where there's less risk, things may kind of get blown off and not seen as important or meaningful. But I think things are just as meaningful. It's just how your point of view is, how you look at it, and what your attitude towards it is. It could be overwhelming, or it could be an opportunity for learning.
Mm-hmm.
This is all how you look at it.
Now, John, many veterans are coming back from the military very affected emotionally, physically, mentally, depression, PTSD, and reintegrating into society, reintegrating into civilian life is a difficulty. You've had experience with, dealing with accessing services, and I know it's well publicized in the media that there have been issues in accessing services within the VA system. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the VA has been around for a long time. And it's a formalized institution, and it's specifically designed to assist veterans, particularly in medical care. The amount of processes that need to go on, I can't even do it justice in terms of explaining, but I can talk about my experience.
Yes.
Where here I coming from the military itself, where I got very, very good health care. I saw a doc almost every week, and someone was always asking me how I was doing mentally and physically. I was a medic myself for 5 years, and I was used to taking care of people and making sure that they were getting the proper medical care. So there's always due diligence in the military in terms of keeping everybody mentally and readily fit. Getting out, I didn't have any of that. So I looked at VA as this is my new resource. I'm no longer under the military's auspice, so I have to go use this as a resource for medical care. And they're dealing with everyone. So everyone has to be treated equally the same. So regardless of what my rank used to be, I could have been a general or a colonel or a sergeant major or anything. They all treat everybody the same. So that took a little bit getting used to.
Okay. Let me focus on something you just said there. So your experience within the military, a finely oiled machine, especially when it came to taking care of its own medical care, mental health care, people asking how you were doing on a regular basis, access to services was easy. Compared to when you come out, access to services is nothing but that.
Yeah, you're looking at long lines, a little bit of confusion. You're kind of going to be being run back and forth to different departments. Sometimes you don't even fully understand what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. Or in my case, I actually knew everything that was going on with me, and I had to actually educate the people there that, hey, this is what's going on with me.
Right.
Not to discredit them, I'm saying that it was almost like I was speaking a different language. Like, people really didn't understand what I was trying to communicate or my situation. Mm-hmm. Like, why I didn't have the time to spend 48 hours waiting online to get a prescription or all these different things. So I went from where I had complete access to medical care to limited access to the quality of medical care I was used to. Mm-hmm. So that became a frustration point. Okay. And I can see why a lot of the guys get upset about it, because it becomes almost like a practice of frustration.
Right. Well, you're used to a culture.
Good job. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're used to a culture where if you needed something, you got what you needed. And then you come out of a system, one, that the transition out of the system is very abrupt and not very well rehearsed or planned compared to what it took to get in and to be trained. And then when you go to the services that you'd come to expect on a regular basis, the medical care, the camaraderie, it's not there.
Right. You don't have the same participation of the social group.
Exactly.
And not everybody's engaged in what your activities are doing, and helping you meet your milestones and goals. And there are personnel there, but there isn't a trust factor there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's my squad or my team or my platoon. It's more of, here's a strange civilian
Right.
that I've never met before and is supposed to help me, and I have a lot of questions, and we don't have enough time to answer all of them.
Or to listen intently enough.
Right. Well, they listen well. It's just that every veteran has lots of questions about what's going to happen next, especially with their health care. And, you know, it depends on how severely you're injured, too. There's priorities. Certainly they provide good care, but there's also, they've fallen through the gaps on a lot of efficiency. And I think one of the biggest problems is that there's really no 100% certain dialogue that's going on between the VA and actual veterans. What they're doing is they're talking to specific types of veterans, but they're not talking, or maybe talking to a veteran organization, but not each individual veteran is being represented properly, I think. Mm-hmm. That's my experience, right?
And so I guess we're getting into, and we're running a little bit low on time, but what do you see as possible solutions? I mean, what's one of the biggest critiques or problems you see with the way the system is run?
Oh boy.
And we don't have time for all that. It's a huge organization.
I would tell people to make your own plan. Like, you know, the Army will give you some stuff to do, but also make your own plan of what you want to achieve and accomplish, and that'll help you through the frustration points dealing with the VA. Have your own goals, stay the course to that, and then insulate yourself with that goal. Like, I want to be able to get good health care and quality care. All right, so you're going to be going in alone because it's set up for everybody, and they're not just going to look at you as special. So you have to have your family and friends and other supportive people in your plan to help you move forward into your interactions with the VA, and then you know, moving forward, you know, integrating into society.
Okay, John, I want to thank you for coming on to the program. We just have a few seconds left. I've been talking with John McEwen. He is a retired Army veteran, Green Beret, good friend of mine. I've known him for over 20 years, and I'm glad to have you back. I want to thank you for your service, and I'm glad you came on. I'm going to continue to ask you how you're doing, and you do a great job of asking me how I'm doing.
I appreciate it, sir.
All right, I want to thank you. If anyone wants to get access to this program in the near future, it'll actually be on the website at AskDrFritz.com. It'll also be on our YouTube channel, just youtube.com/AskDrFritz. I want to thank you for listening. If you know anybody that would benefit from the information contained in this episode, have them go to the website again, AskDrFritz.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Take care.